Hello everyone, I hope you guys are all having a fabulous Monday. Today I'm coming at you with a weekly Minks Monday Q&A. And before we get started, let me share the bag that I'm currently using. And that is the Louis Vuitton Alma BB in the Damier Ebene print. Perfect, especially because it has been raining like cats and dogs and I'm loving every minute of it. Alright, so let's get going with the very first question from Hannah Waddell. Hopefully I said that correctly. I was wondering what your thoughts are on Louis Vuitton price decreases. In Canada, we had a major price increase at the beginning of 2016. Then a few months later, there was a price decrease, and a few months after that, another price decrease. The prices ended up still being an increase from what they were prior to the original increase. And obviously, whenever we hear price decreases and increases, most of the time that's currency related, or the fact that the fashion house is trying to make sure that the prices are the same worldwide. But usually when I think of decreases, I have three feelings that go through my head, and not just in Canada. I'm talking worldwide. The first one being that I'm happy that now someone doesn't have to spend as much money for the item, even though it did increase from the original price, but still it's not that same it's not that same amount that was first introduced, you know, when the whole price increase ended up happening. So that makes me happy. So you don't have to spend as much. The other one being that I start to question if the price decreases continue to happen. Obviously, that will start to affect the resale value of the item. And the third one, I think I would be irritated. Absolutely irritated. And I'm not trying to sugarcoat it or anything like that, but I would be irritated if I ended up spending money after the price increase, the original one, and then it ended up decreasing a few months later and a few months after that. Obviously, I don't believe that they offer price adjustments. How awesome would that be? But I would be irritated. I think anyone would be irritated that you ended up spending that amount of money and then they're like, oh wait, we have to lower the price. So that's what runs through my head. I haven't had this situation happen to me, but I'm really curious. What are your guys' thoughts? Have you had this happen to you? What are your, maybe there's something that I'm completely overseeing that I'm not even, calculating into the equation. So I'd really love to hear your guys' opinion as to why you feel that how you feel yourself about price decreases. So yeah, that's the only thing that I can think of, but those are the three things that run through my head when I think of that. But great question. All right, next one from Lux Lover VB81. I have two questions. First, why do some carry around their authenticity card for their handbag or SLG in the piece that they're currently carrying? I don't understand that. Also, your turquoise Chanel small zip wallet. Do you believe there will be color transfer with the item in a Damier Ebene bag with the red interior? All right, so the first question, why do some people carry around their authenticity cards? I've always wondered that, and the only thing that I can think of is that they maybe leave their authenticity cards in the item so that way when they don't use it, it's still in there. Because those things are very, very easy to lose if you don't have a set place for them. So that's the only thing that I can think of, that it's their way of storing the authenticity card so that way they always have it in the bag and it coordinates to each bag that they have in their collection. But like I said, I'm very curious. Maybe some people do it for other reasons. Do you guys do this? If you do end up having your authenticity card in your bag, let me know in the comment section down below why it is that you do that. But I think it's awesome because especially I see it a lot in what's in my bag videos. They'll end up pulling out their items and then I see the authenticity card. So that's always run through my mind as well. And the only thing that freaks me out about that is, God forbid someone ends up stealing your handbag. Now they don't only have your handbag, they have the authenticity card that goes with it as well. So that's the only thing that I'm thinking of. Of course, it's so bad, right? So like I said, if you guys do this as well, let me know in the comment section down below why it is that you do that, if you don't mind sharing. And your second question, do I think that the turquoise Chanel small zip wallet will have color transfer in a Damier Ebene bag? And this is the wallet that she is asking about. And I think that I will end up having color transfer if I use this in any Damier Ebene bag. So right now I have two Damier Ebene bags in my collection. I have the Alma BB and the Neverfull, and I'm always really, really mindful to make sure that I don't use this when I'm using those bags, especially because this is, I love this color. I never thought I would be so crazy about it, and I've been using it nonstop. I have since transitioned out of it, but I just have a feeling that if I ended up using it in in there, because it is teal, you have the red interior of the Demi Ben. It'll end up looking like a purpley, it might be a really pretty purpley color, but I still think that there will be color transfer. So I usually tend to stay away from using it inside of the colored handbags. Although I do have to say that I have used it inside of my Pochette Metis, and that has the chocolate brown interior, and I haven't had any issues with color transfer. Again, I just feel that the Demi Ben is a little bit more saturated, and it will be a lot more noticeable than if you were to use it in the brown microfiber lining, and I haven't had any problems. As you can see, there's no color transfer on there whatsoever. So that makes me very, very happy. Next question from BB. I'm debating about getting either the Chanel wallet on chain in caviar leather with silver hardware or the Pochette Metis from Louis Vuitton. I know those two are pretty different, but they are the top two on my wish list and I can't decide. I love the look of the Chanel. It is very versatile because you can wear it day and night, and what I like about the Pochette Metis is that you can fit so much more in there. Any advice? I have both of them here, so we have a little bit more eye candy. Here I have the Louis Vuitton Pochette Metis in the monogram canvas, and I also have the wallet on chain from Chanel in the black caviar leather with the gold hardware. So I know it's a little different from the one that you were thinking of. Alright, so now let's get into the comparisons. The Pochette Metis currently retails for $1,700 here in the States. It is mostly made out of canvas. It is a great bag that is also very versatile because you can use it crossbody. You can also use it as a little mini briefcase. It ends up fitting quite a bit more of your items in here. So as you said, it has a lot more space, and I feel that the Pochette Metis is very, very casual. The Chanel wallet on chain currently retails for $2,100 here in the States. It is mostly made of leather. Also a great versatile bag because it ends up transitioning from day to night with ease, as you mentioned. I think that this is one of the best purchases that I have ever made from the fashion house. I just love this bag. So you definitely end up having to go a lot more compact. But both bags end up holding their resale value incredibly well. I'd have to say that the Chanel wallet on chain holds its value a little bit better than the Pochette Metis, but the Pochette Metis, because of its popularity and because it's highly sought after, that has really helped the resale value. And of course, that's also why they ended up increasing the price. So I would have to say, if you tend to have more casual bags in your collection and you want to add a little bit of variety, then I would strongly suggest the Chanel wallet on chain. A great bag. Like I said before, you do have to go compact with it, but I really like how simple it is as well. But if you want a bag that you'll end up using a lot more often, then I highly recommend the Pochette Metis. Even though it is canvas and there is a $400 difference between them, obviously there's a big difference between the size as well, but this one just holds so much more, and it's just, I just can't, I rave about it every time I end up using it. Every time I'm out and about and someone asks me about it, I'm always like, you know, smile to smile whenever I talk about this bag. And I also feel that way with the wallet on chain. So I don't know if I'm helping, but I will have to say that lately I've been using the Pochette Metis a lot more because I really love the fact that I can carry a lot more in here, you know, and the wallet on chain is fantastic. You have to go compact, as I mentioned earlier. It is a beautiful bag. But if you absolutely need to carry a lot more with you and you want a little bit more of a casual bag, then this one would be the one that I would go for. If you want variety, then I would go for the wallet on chain. So hopefully that was able to help. It's really hard because I love both of them so much, so I can sit here and talk about both of them till the cows come home, but I'm not going to do that. Next question from Yurdi Reyes. Hopefully I said that correctly. How do you know you're getting a fresh piece when buying at the boutique? There have been times I've gone into an LV boutique and they have tried to sell me a piece that doesn't look fresh and is the same piece they use to show customers as their floor model, specifically monogram SLGs that have untreated leather. I experienced that when I tried to purchase the Pochette accessoire in monogram. I bought it, but when I got home I took a good close look at it and the leather on the handles was already showing patina, which for a new piece this shouldn't be the case, and it just doesn't look fresh. Alright, great question, and there's a few things that I end up doing whenever I'm looking at an item at a boutique, because obviously we want to make sure that we get an item that doesn't have any wear and tear, that doesn't have any patina, and doesn't have any scratches on the hardware. So these are some of the things that I end up doing. Number one, I always take a look at the date code, especially let's say that I'm shopping in December. Then I look at the date code and I see that the item was is from January, then that lets me know it's been out and about for a while and it could have been a return. So then I usually end up passing on that item. I also take a look at the patina, as you mentioned, because sometimes, especially last week or 2 weeks ago when I was at the boutique, I was looking at an item that they pulled out from the drawer and it had wrinkling on the leather and it started to show some patina there. So again, I start to think maybe it was a return or maybe it was a floor model, but usually with floor models, I'll end up leaving them there. And I remember seeing one way back when at Neiman's that it was like 3 or 4 years old for a Speedy, and it had, you know, it had substantial patina on there. And I remember the sales associate said, no, we'd never sell that. We just have it there so people can check it out. So I know some boutiques are really good at it and some, obviously some others are not. What else do I end up doing? I also have to say that sometimes people say that you know that the item is fresh, quote unquote, when it has the clear or the blue plastic, what's it called, the protective tape. That's not always the case, and I only say that because one of my sales associates, as well as the manager at a boutique that I often go to, they said that sometimes they take off the tape if they see that there's a scratch on there, and they want to make sure that it's not on the hardware itself, because it's usually what it ends up covering. The clear and the blue plastic tape ends up covering the hardware, so they'll end up taking it off just to make sure that it's not on the hardware itself. So that's not always the case. And then what else? Just looking at the date code, looking at the leather. And another thing that I do, and I mentioned this last week, some people might think I'm such a diva for saying it, but I always, if I go to a sales associate that doesn't know me, I always ask to see a variety of that same item. Or not a variety, I ask to see like 3 or 4 of the same item if they have them in stock. So that way I can choose from the items that you know, that they have available. And, you know, most importantly, you want to feel good about the purchase. You don't want to think, oh, well, it has a scratch, but it's the only one that they have. They can always order it, or they can get it from another store if they needed to. But I want to feel 100% comfortable with what it is that I'm walking out of the store with. I don't want there to be any doubt whatsoever, because I really feel that that ends up taking joy from using that item. So those are some of the things that I end up doing when I go to the boutique. And so far I've had, you know, pretty good success with it. I've had more problems online because I'm obviously not able to check them out before I buy them, you know, with scratches and whatnot. So again, hopefully that was able to help. All right, next question from Miko Girly 99. I know you have your preference on which luxe houses you purchase your bags from, Chanel, Louis Vuitton, Celine, etc. But do you have your eye on a new brand, or do you know one that has a potential to compete with your favorites? Love this question. There are 2 bags that have been not more than recently, have been catching my eye, more one than the other. The first one being the Givenchy Antigona. I talked about this last week or 2 weeks ago. I think it's a beautiful bag. I would love to add this bag to my collection at some point in time, possibly by the end of this year. I would love that. But I love how simple it is. I love the leather of it, and I love the fact that you can fit so much more in there. Not so crazy that it comes with the detachable strap, but I really, really do love the bag. And every time I'm either at Neiman's, whether I'm at Nordstrom or wherever I am, I always end up checking it out. And I love that bag. So I have a feeling that might be one of the favorites if I was to add it to my collection. But there's one bag that stands out the most from any other brand that I am very, very curious to check out. I'm very excited to hopefully add to my collection, and that is a Goyard bag, especially the St. Louis totes. A lot of people rave about the St. Louis tote. They say that it is very, very comparable to the Louis Vuitton Neverfull. And sometimes they end up, you know, either you're a big fan of Goyard or you're a big fan of Louis Vuitton. So I've had my eye on that bag for quite some time. I always think about it. Unfortunately, there is no, well, I think Beverly Hills has one, as I mentioned before. There is no really close, there's no close boutique that I can go check them out. So that's one of the bags, one of the items that I'm very, very excited to check out in London. But I don't know. Maybe that'll be a favorite. Only time will tell. But those two bags, more so the Goyard than the Givenchy Antigona, that I'm that I have my eye on. So you know, we will see. But like I said, a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm a diehard fan of Goyard," or some people say that about the Neverfull, and we all know how I feel about the Neverfull. I mean, I have that bag in all three prints, and I think it is one of the best bags ever. So. It has, the Goyard has some big shoes to fill, so we will see. Plus, I love the history of Goyard. All right, enough about that. So those two bags and those two fashion houses. All right, Julia S. I'm not even gonna try it because I know I'm already butchering it in my mind. So Julia S. My apologies. How do you feel about vintage pieces? You know, one of the things that I love the most about vintage pieces is, of course, the history or the stories that piece tells, especially if it was an heirloom piece, if it was passed down from grandmother to mother to daughter. I just love hearing those, especially when people say, oh, this bag is from, you know, 1980, this bag is from 1990, or I got it because of this, and just the stories that are surrounded in that item. So I really do love vintage pieces for that reason. I myself, one of the vintage pieces I think most Louis Vuitton addicts or lovers out there will say would be a great item to have, and that would be a trunk from Louis Vuitton. How awesome would that be? You know, either have it as a coffee table or have it in your room as a decoration, whatever it is, because of the history of the trunk. I will also say that I have been looking for, I mentioned this probably, I don't know, 3 or maybe 2 years ago, something like that on a video. I would love to add a Louis Vuitton Speedy 30 from the year that I was born. But I mean, there's a few out there that I've seen. Some of them are just, I mean, torn to pieces. The canvas is cracking and it looks really bad, and obviously I can't repair the canvas. But I would love to find a Speedy 30 monogram from the year that I was born. So it has to have the specifics. I have certain things in mind that I want it to have as far as how it looks. And I think that would be awesome. I think, you know, obviously I wouldn't want to spend an arm and a leg on it, but just something to add to my collection that was from the year that I was born. I think that's awesome. Am I crazy? I don't know, but vintage pieces I'm a big fan of, and again, the stories that they tell is something that I love about them. So great question. All right, next question from Happy Girl. Can you go into detail about price differences in Paris, London, and US for luxe goods? I will be going in March and I would like a better understanding. Great question, and this really allows me, this gives me the opportunity to address something that I discussed last week. Last week I said that London is on top for luxe goodies. That is not the case. My apologies for misinformation. When Brexit happened, right after Brexit happened, London was the best place to buy luxe goodies, but France is now back on top. So I can admit when I'm wrong, so I apologize for the misinformation, and I hadn't looked at it since that happened. So again, my apologies. But with price differences, it's really hard to be able to pinpoint, only because the currency exchange rate is constantly changing. You know, it's not like Paris is a 20% savings from the US, or Italy is a 15% savings from the US, or anything like that, because every item is different. Some items are a lot less expensive in Paris. Some are not that big of a difference. But one thing I do end up doing before I end up going anywhere outside of the US where I'm thinking about buying luxury goods, I usually make a list of the items that I want to buy, and then when I'm there, I go to a trusty app, which is XE Currency, that ends up updating every minute, and that lets me know how much it is, you know, in, let's say, London or Paris compared to the US, and that way I can see if it's worth buying overseas and then bringing back home. And there's a few other key factors that you have to think of whenever you're buying anything in Paris, London, or anywhere else in the world outside of the US. You have to think that the US or customs allows one sole person to bring back $800 into the States, or a couple of people, $1,600 combined, back into the States. Anything over that, you are subject to pay a tax on top of it. So obviously that ends up cutting into the savings that you would buy in London or Paris or wherever. Something else to keep in mind, most credit card companies end up charging you a foreign transaction fee. Of course, I know that the gold card from American Express, the platinum card, or really I've noticed that more so the cards that charge a yearly fee don't really charge a foreign transaction fee. I could be wrong, so don't quote me on it. But if you were to use your Visa, if you were to use your MasterCard when you're overseas, that also ends up charging you a foreign transaction fee, which I believe is 2.9% of the item that you're buying. So it's funny because whenever you buy something, like when we bought our items in Paris or in London, or in Italy, I'm sorry, they said that if we use our credit card, we end up getting a higher VAT. VAT stands for value added tax. I did a review on it, or I did a video on it, and I will put it on the description box below. That way, if you guys are traveling, hopefully it'll help out. Hopefully it's not misinformation, as this video I think is like 2 years old. But anyways, usually whenever you go to these stores, to the luxury goods stores, they end up asking you if you use your credit card, you get a higher percentage rate for value added tax than if you were to use cash. So again, you might be saving a little bit more, but if you're using that credit card that does end up charging you a foreign transaction fee, again, that'll end up cutting into the savings. And of course, if you end up going over that $800, or if you end up going over that $1,600 whenever you come back into the States, then you are subject to pay a fee on top of that as well. So that's when I end up weighing in, is it worth me bringing back home? Is it better for me to buy it at home? It might be, you know, it might be $50 more expensive if I buy it in the States, but I don't have to worry about customs. I don't have to worry about, you know, putting it into my luggage or taking up space or anything like that. So there's a lot of factors that go into whenever I buy items, you know, outside of the US. So again, I think that having an app that has the currency exchange rate, that way you can really see what ends up being a better value whenever you are abroad. And I will make sure and put the name of the app down below. Hopefully that'll, actually maybe I can end up just linking it so that way you can check it out for yourselves. But it has always helped me out. And again, having that list either on my phone or just with me, knowing how much they are in the States, and then I compare it to when I was in Italy or when I was in Paris, then I was like, it's not that big of a savings, and it'd be more of a hassle to bring it home. I'm just going to go ahead and pass on it. So hopefully that was able to help, and hopefully I don't forget to add the video, or maybe I'll put it on the toolbar up above so you guys can check it out. So great question. All right, next question from Crystal Lee. Have you ever had a sales associate that was actually very sweet and friendly, but you seem to have a broader knowledge of the brand and products that he or she did? For example, one time I went into the Louis Vuitton store and asked to see the business card holder in empreinte leather, and she kind of looked at me like I was stupid and kept insisting that it didn't exist and I must be referring to the empreinte clay. How did you or would you handle situations like this? And would you ask for a new sales associate? Great question. You know, I have to say that I have had this happen a few times, especially if it's a boutique that I don't know a sales associate there, you know, and I'll say, oh, well, I'm looking for this bag, or I'm looking for this specific item. It was just released in blah, blah, blah. So usually I'll end up giving them an upfront description, if you will, of the item that I'm looking for. And then usually I've had some sales associates say, oh my goodness, you know a lot more about the brand. You know, do you work for Louis Vuitton? How do you know so much information and whatnot? And sometimes I've had sales associates that are so adamant that the item doesn't exist, kind of like what you experienced. And when that ends up happening, I usually end up saying, can you double check? Can you find out? Maybe ask your manager because it was recently released, or this and that. And usually that ends up helping. Another thing that I have also done in the past is that I try as hard as I can. It's really hard with new items, but I try to have a picture of what I'm looking for. That way I can reference it and I can say, oh, by the way, this is the item that I'm looking for. There have been times when they're like, no, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. And then I say, can you double check just to make sure, you know, and I'll usually put it back on me and say, maybe I'm crazy, but I think it was released a few weeks ago, or a few, you know, a few days ago, or what have you. and then they'll double check the computer, and 99% of the time they're like, oh yeah, it's right here. I didn't know why I didn't see it. I didn't know about it, or what have you. And I do have to say that because of this awesome community that we have, because of all of the information that we end up passing towards one another, I have to say that it really ends up helping out whenever I go into boutique. Instagram is such a great source to go for new items, because some people have awesome sales associates that let them check out the items beforehand, snap pictures, and post them on Instagram, you know, and that really ends up helping out. So I'd have to say the biggest thank you is to this community and the people that are part of it, because if it wasn't for us talking about bags and being so passionate about these brands and these fashion houses, then I think a lot of us, myself, I would be in the dark about half the items, you know, especially if my sales associate doesn't want to cough up the information, you know, so I would have to say that I have experienced it, but I haven't had the same exact situation happen to where they were like, no, no, no. If that ended up happening, I would just, like I said, I'll say, can you double check? Can you find out? And if at that time their demeanor starts to change and then they're a little bit more dismissive, then yes, I will ask for a new sales associate, or I'll ask for, you know, just someone else. It's really hard because you don't want to hurt their feelings, but at the same time, if I want to know more information about it, I don't want to just leave and just say, I really wish I knew, I really wish I knew. And you know, sometimes I find that this happens more with customer service than it does in the boutique. There's been times when I call and they're just like, I have no idea. I don't know. I've never heard of it, you know? And then you go into the boutique, they're like, oh yeah, it's this item. So I have experienced somewhat, you know, somewhat of a similar situation online versus the boutique. But yeah, it's crazy, but this community absolutely rocks. I have to say that. All right, next question from Katie Ratcher. When I ordered my 6-key holder in Rose Ballerine, I wasn't happy because the leather covered snap had a huge scratch across it and the canvas was a 1/4 inch off center, quite noticeable for a small piece. I brought it into a boutique to see if they would order me another one, but when the sales associate asked me why I wanted to return it, she said that the scratch was a reasonable reason to return or exchange it. However, she said that it would not be reasonable to exchange if only the canvas was off center. This made me feel pretty bad. I should be able to expect a perfect item when spending so much money. Shouldn't someone be able to return, exchange an item if it's within the 14-day period, no matter what the reason? This is a great question, and I agree with you. I think that as long as the item has never been used, as long as it doesn't show anywhere whatsoever, and as long as it's in the exact same condition that it was when it was purchased, there shouldn't be a problem within those 14 days. However, a lot of people end up taking advantage of the return policies. You know, they'll end up using the item for like 5, 6, 10 days, and they know that they still have the 14 days, and then, you know, come that 12th day or that 14th day, they go back to the boutique and they're like, oh, I don't like it. It didn't work out for me, or they didn't do this. And sometimes Louis Vuitton is known for refusing returns, especially if it's someone that takes advantage of the return policies. So they'll end up prohibiting someone from buying, and they'll definitely not ban them, but I guess you can say ban them, but they will refuse a return from them because they do it so constant, you know. And so a lot of fashion houses don't have return policies. They end up having exchanges only, or they end up having store credit. You know, and the way that I think about it is that it's only fair if someone's taking advantage of a return policy. I feel that it's only fair because then we start running into the same factors that we discussed earlier about an item having patina, about it having wrinkling, about it having, you know, considerable wear on the hardware. I know all of that is going to happen to the item, but if I'm paying the price for a brand new piece from the boutique, I want to be the first one that has that patina. I want to be the one that ends up doing something to the hardware. Because if I want all those characteristics of a used item to be on my handbag, then I would end up going the pre-loved route and I could save some cash, right? I did read an article where it said that they end up taking your driver's license information anytime you do a return, and that's how they can track when someone's taking advantage of return policies. Not just necessarily only the luxe fashion houses, but other fashion houses as well. And I also read something else that was very interesting, that there is no legal requirement for a store to take back an item. They do it out of an extension of customer service. So as I said before, there's a few other fashion houses that don't do returns whatsoever. You know, and some are a little bit more lenient, especially in today's day and age where customer service is such a big part of retail. So like I said, I read that on a few different articles, and I was really, you know, because there's sometimes when you see, you know, they'll say we can refuse anyone at any point in time. So the fact that I read that it said there is no legal requirement for them to take back the item, that they do it as a form of customer service, I get, you know, it makes sense. As I said in the beginning, I feel that as long as there is no wear, as long as it's still in the same condition, then it shouldn't be a problem. And I know there are a few stores that I have returned items at that I sincerely just change my mind on it. And sometimes the people that you're returning it to, the associate, they make you feel so bad, like you've committed a crime or something. You know, that's not always the case, but it's not the best feeling in the world, but I know exactly what you're talking about. So I think that especially 14 days is more than enough time for someone to say, hey, you know, I decided against it. It's not for me. I have my eye on something else. But then when you have to give them a whole book of reasonings as to why, I think that's kind of crazy. You know, but maybe that's just me. How do you guys feel about return policies? Yeah, so great question. And the last question is from April Paul Bear. Hopefully I said that correctly. Are you worried about color transfer with a Pochette Metis in a lighter color? This is in reference to what I discussed last week, that the Pochette Metis was coming out in the Empreinte leather, and there is a rose color that I put myself on the wait list for. And I'm not gonna lie, all right? I am worried about the color transfer, but I am so excited about the pink. But as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I am a creature of habit. And I know I love the idea of a colored bag. I love the idea of a red bag, a pink bag, but I will probably end up going for the black one or the noir, just because it's so much easier to use and it's so much more, I feel like I don't have to worry as much. Obviously, when you have black, if I'm wearing jeans, if I'm wearing a black top, then everything's just peachy keen. But yeah, so I am worried. I'm not going to lie to you guys, but I'm more so excited about seeing the color that it's going to be. And I know it'll just make my heart sing. So who knows? But great question. All right, you guys, so that does it for Minks Monday Q&A. I hope you enjoyed it. And again, I would love to hear your thoughts on on all of the topics that we discussed, because I think that it's awesome to get someone else's perspective on these topics. And hopefully I was able to help. And I've had a lot of you ask me, how do you go about asking questions for Minks Monday? If you can please put them on the most recent MMQA, Minks Monday Q&A. It makes it a lot easier for me to see, because usually on Friday, if it's too busy on Friday, then I'll end up doing it on Wednesday. But on Friday, that's when I end up responding back to comments, and that's where I end up choosing the questions from. Sometimes I do get questions on Instagram. Sometimes I do get them, you know, on other videos, but for the most part, if you can please put them on the most recent one, it would be very, very much appreciated. All right, you guys, so this week I have an interesting lineup. I have my bag ban video. I don't know if I'll do it tomorrow, maybe Wednesday, and I also have an unboxing. Those two things shouldn't be together. But anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all tomorrow. And as always, make it a fabulous day or not, the choice is yours. Have a great day, you guys.